Ladies and gentlemen, betrayal is a wound that cuts deeper than mere misfortune. It is a conscious act of destruction, an abandonment of principle in favor of short-term gain. And let me tell you this, those who betray, those who turn their backs on truth and loyalty, will not escape unscathed. They will pay, not through vengeance, not through some crude act of retribution, but through the very nature of reality itself. You see, the world operates on a balance. Trust is not an abstract concept. It is the foundation upon which everything stable is built. Families, businesses, friendships, even nations. And when that trust is shattered, chaos follows. The liar believes he can escape judgment, that his betrayal will be forgotten, but reality is structured to ensure that falsehoods come back to haunt their creators. Look around you. Those who have built their empires on deception, where are they now? They decay in the very ruin they orchestrated. A person who betrays his friend soon finds himself without allies. A leader who deceives his people faces the wrath of history. Even at the most personal level, the unfaithful spouse, the deceitful business partner, the manipulative politician, all of them will, in time, collapse under the weight of their own treachery. And what of those who were betrayed? They suffer, yes. They endure pain that shakes them to their core. But the betrayed have one advantage. They can rise again, stronger, smarter, wiser. There is a fire that burns in the hearts of those who have been wronged, and that fire forges something indestructible, a new foundation built on hard-won wisdom. So let this be a warning. If you have broken trust, if you have walked the path of deceit, understand that the reckoning is not avoidable. You will pay for your betrayal, one way or another. But if you are willing to confront your actions, to endure the suffering necessary for redemption, there is a way forward. It is not an easy path, but it is the only one that leads to salvation. To those who have been betrayed, stand firm. Your pain is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your resurgence. And to those who have betrayed, prepare yourself. Because reality itself does not forget the consequences of deception. Betrayal is not just a fleeting act of dishonesty. It is a fundamental rupture in the very fabric of reality, a violation of the natural order that governs human interaction. Those who deceive, who manipulate, who turn their backs on the principles of trust and loyalty, believe they have outmaneuvered the system. They think they can escape unscathed, that their actions will be forgotten or dismissed as mere moments of weakness. But this is a fatal miscalculation, because reality itself is structured in a way that punishes deceit. And that punishment is not just external, it is internal, psychological, and in many cases irreversible. Consider what deception truly entails. To betray someone is not merely to act against their interests, it is to actively undermine the implicit structure of trust that allows people to function together. Trust is the invisible glue that binds human relationships, whether in families, friendships, businesses, or entire societies. When a person engages in deception, they are not simply lying, they are destabilizing the entire framework that makes cooperation possible. They create an imbalance, a distortion in the natural state of things, and any distortion left unchecked has consequences that ripple far beyond the initial act. Think of it like this. Imagine a foundation carefully constructed over years, solid, steady, meant to bear the weight of something great. Now introduce a single crack. At first it may seem insignificant. The structure still stands after all. But that crack begins to grow, and as time passes, it spreads, weakening the entire foundation until one day the whole thing collapses. This is what deception does, not just to relationships, but to the individual who engages in it. Those who betray believe they are gaining something. They think they are securing an advantage, be it power, wealth, social standing, or even just the temporary satisfaction of getting away with something. But what they fail to understand is that they are exchanging something invaluable, integrity, stability, credibility, for something fleeting. They are selling long-term security for short-term gain, and that exchange is always a losing bargain. There is a fundamental principle in the universe. Actions have consequences, and deception breeds destruction. Sometimes the consequences are immediate: exposure, shame, the loss of trust. But often they are slow, insidious, and far more damaging. The liar, over time, becomes incapable of distinguishing between truth and falsehood. The manipulator starts to believe his own fabrications. The betrayer finds that in his pursuit of power or advantage, he has rendered himself utterly alone, incapable of forming genuine connections, incapable of trusting others, because he has corrupted the very thing that makes trust possible. And this is the ultimate irony. Those who betray suffer just as much, if not more, than those they have wronged. They become prisoners of their own deception. They must constantly scheme, constantly cover their tracks, constantly guard against the possibility of exposure. This breeds paranoia, anxiety, and ultimately self-destruction. A life built on lies is a life built on sand, unstable, crumbling, destined to collapse. Look through history, through literature, through personal experience. How many betrayers have truly escaped their fate? How many have gone on to live meaningful, fulfilled lives? The answer is painfully clear. Those who deceive may rise for a time. They may enjoy the illusion of success, but sooner or later the weight of reality catches up to them. They will pay the price, not necessarily through vengeance or external punishment, but through the natural consequences of their own action. Because no one can live a lie forever. No one can escape the consequences of violating the fundamental structure of trust and truth. Reality will see to that. The cost of trust violated. Trust is not just a pleasant social virtue. It is the very foundation upon which all human relationships, institutions, and societies are built. It is the invisible contract that allows individuals to cooperate, to build, to love, and to create stability in an otherwise chaotic world. When trust is violated, when betrayal seeps into the core of a relationship or a system, the damage is far greater than the immediate hurt inflicted. It is a rupture that sends shock waves through everything connected to it. The cost of this violation is profound, and those who undermine trust, whether in personal relationships, business, or society at large, are playing with forces far greater than they realize. To understand the magnitude of this, consider how trust functions at the most basic level. A child trusts their parents to provide safety and care. A friend trusts another to be loyal in times of hardship. A business partner trusts that agreements will be honored. A citizen trusts their government to act in good faith. These bonds of trust create stability, allowing people to move forward without constantly looking over their shoulders. They allow us to plan, to dream, to build lives with confidence. But when that trust is broken, the consequences are not just immediate, they are lasting, often generational. Betrayal does not simply cause pain, it erodes the fundamental ability to trust at all. If a person is deceived by someone they relied on, they don't simply grieve the loss of that particular relationship. They begin to question everything. They become hesitant, wary, cynical. The world, once navigable, becomes a dangerous, unpredictable place. The betrayal of trust breeds fear, and fear spreads like a disease, infecting every interaction, every opportunity for connection, every moment of vulnerability. Consider the impact of a broken promise. It might seem small in isolation, a missed commitment, an act of dishonesty, a moment of selfishness. But to the person who was relying on that promise, it can be devastating. It forces them to reconsider not just their trust in the individual who failed them, but their belief in promises altogether. They begin to wonder, if I was wrong about this, what else am I wrong about? If I can be betrayed here, where else am I vulnerable? This effect is not limited to individuals. It extends to entire institutions. Look at history. When governments betray their people through corruption and deception, trust in the system collapses. And when that happens, instability follows. Revolutions are not sparked solely by bad policies. They are ignited by the betrayal of trust. The moment people believe that those in power no longer have their best interests at heart, the fabric holding society together begins to fray. The same is true in business. Companies that deceive their customers or their employees inevitably crumble under the weight of their dishonesty. They may survive for a time, but once trust is gone, it is nearly impossible to recover. The cost of violated trust is measured not only in broken relationships, failed institutions, or lost opportunities, but in the emotional and psychological toll it takes on those affected. The person who has been betrayed must now operate in a world where nothing feels certain. They become hesitant to invest in new relationships, cautious in their commitments, defensive where they once were open. In short, they lose a fundamental part of what makes human connection meaningful, the ability to trust freely. And here lies the great tragedy. Those who betray often do so for short-term gain, failing to realize that the damage they cause is not just external, it is internal as well. They think they have won, that they have secured an advantage, but in reality, they have planted the seeds of destruction, not just in the people they have hurt, but in themselves. Because a world where trust is shattered is not just worse for the betrayed, it is worse for everyone, including the betrayed. So, the cost of betrayal is not just measured in the immediate pain it causes. It is measured in the slow erosion of stability, the corrosion of confidence, and the lasting scars it leaves on those who must now navigate a world where trust, once broken, is never quite the same again. The inevitable judgment of reality. Reality is structured in a way that punishes deception, betrayal, and the violation of trust. This is not merely a moral statement, it is a fundamental truth about the way the world operates. People may believe they can act with impunity, that they can lie, manipulate, and betray without consequence, but reality does not forget. Sooner or later, the truth emerges, and when it does, it brings judgment. This judgment is not necessarily immediate. Many betrayals go unpunished for a time. The deceiver may seem to flourish, reaping the benefits of their dishonesty, rising in power, wealth, or social standing, and for a while they may even convince themselves that they have escaped the consequences. But what they fail to realize is that every betrayal carries a hidden cost, a debt that will eventually come due. Consider this: every lie distorts reality. Every act of betrayal creates an imbalance, and reality, whether in the form of human relationships, social structures, or psychological well-being, has a way of correcting itself. The longer deception continues, the worse the correction will be. The judgment of reality is not always a single dramatic moment of reckoning. More often, it is a slow unraveling, a gradual corrosion of everything the betrayer thought they had gained. Take, for example, the person who rises in power through manipulation and deceit. At first, they may seem untouchable. They surround themselves with enablers, people who either benefit from their deception or fear the consequences of confronting it. But over time, the cracks begin to show. Those enablers, sensing weakness, turn against them. The foundation they built on lies starts to crumble, and the collapse is inevitable. Or consider the unfaithful spouse who believes they can have the best of both worlds, love and commitment on one hand, pleasure and secrecy on the other. For a while they may manage the deception, but something shifts in them. They begin to erode their own ability to experience genuine intimacy, because love, at its core, depends on truth. And when the betrayal is finally exposed, as it almost always is, they find themselves alone, having destroyed the very thing they once took for granted. Even if no external punishment comes, even if no grand revelation exposes the deceiver, they cannot escape themselves. A life built on lies requires constant vigilance. The betrayer must always watch their back, always remember what they said to whom, always fear exposure. This is psychological torment. Whether they admit it or not, they may suppress it for a time, bury it beneath distractions or self-rationalizations, but deep down, they know. And that knowledge eats away at them. The judgment of reality is often subtle. It manifests as paranoia, as loneliness, as the gradual erosion of one's ability to trust or be trusted. It appears in the form of lost opportunities, in the quiet but steady withdrawal of respect from others. A person who has betrayed too many times finds themselves isolated, surrounded not by allies but by people who are either as untrustworthy as they are, or who merely tolerate them out of necessity. And in the end, this is the final punishment, the loss of something real, something meaningful. The betrayer sacrifices their own integrity, their own peace of mind, their own connection to the truth. They become a fragmented person, incapable of true connection, because betrayal corrupts not just the people around them, but the betrayer themselves. So let this be clear. Betrayal is never without consequence. The world is structured in such a way that those who act in bad faith, who manipulate, who deceive, will in time be judged, not necessarily by laws or by other people, but by the unforgiving nature of reality itself. No one outruns the truth forever. The resurgence of the betrayal. Betrayal is devastating. It shatters trust, disrupts order, and leaves those who have been wronged drowning in anger, grief, and uncertainty. But while the pain of betrayal is immense, it is not the end of the story. The betrayed are never weak for long. They rise, they rebuild, and when they do, they carry with them a strength forged in suffering, a wisdom born from hardship, and a resolve that is nearly unbreakable. This is the paradox of betrayal. While it aims to weaken, it often produces the opposite effect. Those who experience it, if they do not succumb to bitterness or despair, emerge stronger, sharper, and more discerning. They learn who they can trust and, more importantly, who they cannot. They develop resilience, the ability to stand firm in the face of adversity, because they have already survived the worst kind of wound, one inflicted not by an enemy, but by someone they trusted. To understand the resurgence of the betrayed, we must first acknowledge the pain they endure. Betrayal is not just the loss of trust, it is the destruction of a framework of meaning. When you trust someone, you build expectations around that trust. You plan your life with certain assumptions about who will stand by your side, who will honor their word, who will protect what matters. Betrayal rips those assumptions apart, leaving nothing but chaos in its wake. The betrayed are forced to question not only the person who deceived them, but their own judgment. How did I not see this coming? What does this say about me? How can I ever trust again? It is at this lowest point that the real choice appears. One path leads to bitterness, resentment, and self-destruction. The other leads to strength. The difference lies in whether the betrayed allow their pain to define them or to refine them. History and literature are filled with examples of those who have been betrayed, only to rise again with more power and clarity than before. Julius Caesar's assassination led to the rise of Augustus, who became Rome's first emperor. Nelson Mandela was betrayed not just by individuals, but by an entire system. Yet he emerged from decades in prison not broken, but stronger, more determined, and more capable of leading a nation. Even in personal life, we see this pattern. People who lose everything to deceit or treachery often come back with a renewed sense of purpose, learning from their past and using that knowledge to build something greater. The resurgence of the betrayed comes with several advantages. First, they become far more discerning. Once you have been deceived, you begin to see patterns you previously ignored. You recognize dishonesty more quickly. You spot manipulation before it takes hold, and you no longer tolerate the kind of behavior that once harmed you. Second, they develop a kind of inner toughness that cannot be easily broken. When you have faced deep betrayal and survived, smaller betrayals no longer shake you as they once did. You learn that you are capable of enduring pain, and that realization alone makes you stronger than you ever were before. And third, the betrayed often rebuild their lives with a greater sense of purpose. When trust is broken, when illusions are shattered, it forces a person to reassess what truly matters. They strip away the unnecessary, the superficial, and they focus on what is real. They create new relationships based on honesty, not pretense. They pursue goals with more clarity because they have seen firsthand what happens when they allow deception into their lives. So, to those who have been betrayed, understand this. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are being forged into something far stronger than you were before. This pain you feel is temporary, but the strength you gain from it is permanent. Do not let betrayal define you as a victim. Let it refine you as a warrior. Because when the betrayed rise again, they do not just return to who they were, they become something greater. The path to redemption. Betrayal carries a heavy price. The one who deceives, manipulates, or violates trust may enjoy temporary gains, but eventually reality demands payment. Lies unravel, trust erodes. And those who betray find themselves alone, distrusted, and often facing the wreckage of everything they once valued. But does this mean that redemption is impossible? Is the betrayer forever condemned to live in the ruins they created? Not necessarily. Redemption exists, but it is not cheap. It cannot be earned through hollow apologies, empty promises, or superficial gestures. The path to redemption is difficult, painful, and often humiliating. It requires the betrayer to confront the full magnitude of their actions, to endure suffering equal to the harm they have caused, and to rebuild what they have broken with patience and integrity. Not everyone will succeed. Many will take the easy route, deflecting blame, making excuses, or seeking shortcuts. But for those who are truly willing to change, the possibility remains. Acknowledging the truth. The first and most crucial step toward redemption is absolute honesty. And this is where most fail. The instinct of the betrayer is to minimize their wrongdoing, to soften the edges of the truth, to claim that circumstances forced their hand, or that the victim exaggerated the harm. But no redemption can begin until the betrayer fully acknowledges what they have done, without justification, without self-pity, and without distortion. This is painful. It requires the betrayer to confront their own moral failures, to accept that they were not merely misunderstood, but actively destructive. And it is here that many turn away, because facing the full truth about oneself is one of the hardest things a person can do, bearing the consequences. A true attempt at redemption does not seek to escape consequences, it accepts them. The betrayer must be willing to face anger, rejection, and the loss of what they once took for granted. They cannot demand forgiveness, nor can they dictate how or when others should heal. Too often, those who betray expect a quick path to being welcomed back. They say, "I've apologized. Why are you still upset?" This is not remorse, it is entitlement. True redemption means understanding that trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. It may take years. It may never be fully restored. And the betrayer must be prepared to endure this without resentment, making amends. Words are meaningless without action. The betrayer must not only acknowledge their wrongdoing, but actively work to repair the damage. This is not just about grand gestures, it is about consistency, day after day, action after action, proving through behavior, not words, that they are no longer the person who committed the betrayal. And this is where real transformation begins. If someone has lied, they must become a person who values truth above all else. If they have manipulated, they must learn to engage with others honestly, without hidden motives. If they have been unfaithful, they must commit themselves to integrity, even when no one is watching. Redemption is not about being forgiven by others. It is about fundamentally becoming a different person, one who would not commit the same betrayal again. Rebuilding character. The final step is the longest and the most grueling. Redemption is not a single event, it is a lifelong process. The person who betrayed must work every day to strengthen their character, to discipline their mind, and to live in a way that is worthy of trust. They must reject their past weaknesses, not just in words, but in actions, repeated over time. And here's the truth. Not everyone will believe in their change. Some will never forgive. Some will always see them as who they once were. But that does not matter. The goal of redemption is not to be seen as good by others. It is to become someone who is, in reality, good. For those who have betrayed, the road back is long, hard, and painful. But it is not impossible. True redemption is available, but only to those who are willing to suffer for it, to change completely, and to walk the difficult path of integrity every single day.